If a lower-level service member provided that level of information before the launches of manned aircraft with pilots inside those cockpits, that service member would have been court-martialed and discharged.
Our fascist authoritarian government under Donald Trump does not want accountability. They do not want to be held accountable for their crimes or even alleged crimes. We're learning that Pete Hegseth, not only did he refuse to sit for an interview with the Department of Defense's IG, Inspector General, looking into the SignalGate, the instance where Pete Hegseth shared top secret war plans with an unauthorized journalist on a Signal chat on his personal phone. We are learning all kinds of details about this, and it just opens up the floodgates of those who might have been possibly questioning whether or not this is fascism. And they're now realizing, oh shit, these people don't want accountability. They want a shroud of secrecy, which is why they've structurally altered the makeup of the press pool at the Pentagon. They want only their propaganda disseminated. Here is a tweet from Kyle, not a tweet, it's on Blue Sky, but they're all tweets, right? He's retweeted himself doing reporting here for NBC. Breaking now on MS Now, the SignalGate report contradicts Pete Hegseth's claim that he did nothing wrong. It showed he, quote, violated policy by using a non-approved device, a source who read the report says. Hegseth failed to preserve records. The report says, and this is very important, more important than the fact that he wouldn't sit for an interview with the IG. The report says he put the operations and service people at risk. He risked the lives of the troops that he is always acting as though he loves and he supports the troops and it's all about the troops and their welfare, giving them all the latitude they need to commit all the war crimes that he charges them with. Kyle Griffin, this was obviously a repost. More breaking on MS Now. Pete Hegseth refused an interview request for the Pentagon Inspector General's investigation into SignalGate, according to two sources who read and were briefed on the report. Hegseth would not he would not turn over his phone, a source who read the report told MS Now. MS Now, come on. You couldn't come up with a better name than that. Anyway, listen, I want to get us all on the same page. So I'm going to play a brief segment of a reporter talking about exactly what is going on here from PBS NewsHour. And then we'll talk about this and break it down in detail on the other side.
So this is an investigation by the Department of Defense's Inspector General, mandated by Congress. It took him months. And according to a person who has read this document, the Inspector General found that the messages that the Secretary transmitted were, quote, secret, no foreign. The definition of that classification level is that unauthorized disclosure could reasonably be expected to cause serious damage to national security, and it can't be shared with foreigners. And the Inspector General went on to say, if those messages had been intercepted, it would have endangered U.S. service members and the mission. And the reason the Inspector General has concluded this is that Hegseth was, as you just said, narrating or really previewing upcoming strikes into Yemen against Houthi rebel leaders on a Signal chat, where Atlantic editor-in-chief and Washington Week moderator Jeffrey Goldberg had been accidentally added. And the detail was extraordinary. Times, the types of weapons, exactly who was going to be flying toward Yemen, exactly when. And they concluded, quote, we are currently clean on OPSEC short for operational security. A former senior military official told me this, Jeff, today, and this was just echoed by the Senate Armed Services Committee top Democrat Jack Reed, that if a lower-level service member provided that level of information before the launches of manned aircraft with pilots inside those cockpits, that service member would have been court-martialed and discharged.
How is the Pentagon responding to all of this?
The Pentagon points to other results inside the Inspector General's findings, including these. The Secretary can declassify anything as he sees fit. And that suggests that Secretary Hegseth's defense is that what he was writing, he was declassifying essentially as he wrote it. The Inspector General also said the Secretary provided a small handful of signal messages to the IG, but not others. Hegseth declined an interview with the Inspector General, and he informed the Inspector General that he considers this investigation completely partisan. And Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell provided this statement, quote, "The Inspector General review is a total exoneration of Secretary Hegseth and proves what we knew all along. No classified information was shared. This matter is resolved and the case is closed." By the way, the Inspector General also concluded, Jeff, that Hegseth violated policy by using his personal device for these signal chats rather than a government phone.
All right, now that we've got the facts, we've laid out the case here. Joining me to talk about this is Adam Gurry, the founder and editor of Liberal Currents, an amazing independent news outlet that you should really check out. Adam Gurry, thank you for joining me to talk about this. With the rise of fascism in the United States and the attempts to really leave the United States, at the very least, anemic and maybe necrotic, what are your takeaways from this story?
It's just sort of an exemplar of the way that the administration approaches running the executive branch. They talk this big game about how they're rooting out, DEI and sort of ideologically motivated reasons for hiring and just focusing on pure merit. In one case, someone who works at the State Department famously said, "You just need competent white men running things." Pete Hegseth, who has no qualifications for his job whatsoever, essentially is just a talking head that Trump likes. And even if he has, in theory, the authority to declassify things, he does not have the authority to determine which devices are okay to send official communication over, nor does he have the authority to circumvent, the record-keeping requirements of the federal government. Like there's a number of things he does not have, even if he could declassify things at will, which I think is questionable. There's just he's just a sloppy guy who just wanted to communicate in the easiest way that exists to communicate. And the end result is what we saw. And that's pretty much their governance style overall. Something I think people forget is with the Nazis, the Night of the Long Knives was not killing minorities or Jews. It was killing people like Pete Hegseth, essentially to show the military that they were serious about being a serious military under the Third Reich. For better or for worse, Pete Hegseth, they may get rid of him. If they did, though, who they replace him with, I doubt it would be a higher caliber person. That's just who's in the orbit, and that's just who they're interested in. Because the number one thing that Donald Trump is interested in is personalism, people who have personal loyalty to him more than competence.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up fascism and Hitler in the 30s, the previous century, because it seems it's interesting to me that the playbook of fascism is just being rolled out step by step by step. The 14th defining characteristics of fascism, that militarism, and there's so many aspects of it that are just on brand for what's taking place right now. Are you surprised at all that, one, we're lucky that their incompetence is slowing the march of fascism, but are you surprised at all that there's no attempt at all to even hide or mask what they're doing?
Yeah, I'm not surprised because of who they are, but I think that it works against them. Someone in our little orbit of liberal currents once put it that they often seem to act as if they're in the last stage of authoritarian consolidation and not the very first. Right. And that really does not help them. You have to get all your ducks in a row to really do this. And they very much do not. So as you say, it's to our benefit. It's still terrible because it will result in lost lives and, people getting hurt. And things like that. But in terms of just sheer odds that we're going to succeed and pushing them back, it is good in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Liberal Currents. Tell me a little bit, and by extension, I guess, tell the audience about your publication, and you've got a fundraiser right now.
Yes.
I highly recommend Liberal Currents. I have a lot of friends who are in the know, who are wonky policy types, but also people who are just generally passionate about politics and the current situation we find ourselves in. So I guess I jumped ahead and gave you the endorsement, but tell us about Liberal Currents and the fundraiser for your independent media organization.
Yeah, so Liberal Currents, we've been around since 2017. We launched in direct response to the beginning of the Trump era. From the beginning, the idea was that liberalism had started resting on its laurels. A lot of its values had just become assumed, and not really a lot of people who cared about those things had sort of forgotten why they should, and that put our enemies at an advantage. So the beginning was mostly just articulating the basic rationales behind liberal principles. But as the Trump era proceeded, we certainly recognized that we needed to be doing more than that. So we started looking at bigger views of how this happened, what's happening worldwide, what they have in common ideologically, how things have been resisted before, what movements succeed, what movements fail, and why. So there's things down at the very tactical level and things at the very strategic. And in the last year and a half, we've gotten very nitty gritty. Within a couple of days of the election last year, we published a piece essentially laying out all of the institutional tools that exist for Democrats that control any jurisdiction, whether from the very local to the state level, to sandbag the federal government if they need to, just to slow it down and delaying action to get us through to 2028. So we're writing at that level. We're writing at the level of diagnosis and philosophy. And we're just a general opposition to fascism at this particular moment, but also providing a vision for a liberal future publication. And the fundraiser is in order to give us a chance to really increase our reach in the media ecosystem, which, in my opinion, has tremendously failed, especially this year. In terms
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So for sure. Well, listen, I absolutely endorse your publication. And I think everybody, if you've got $2, $3, $4, $5 or more, if Daddy Warbucks is out there and wants to fund the organization, independent media is under threat right now in this country. And that's by design from the Trump administration and these fascists. So out there, if you've got a few dollars and you want to support something that absolutely is moving the needle and giving people the ammunition, rhetorically speaking, giving people the resources, the motivation, how to organize, what to do, and exactly the lay of the land. Liberal Currents is what it is, liberalcurrents.com. And also the GoFundMe, which we will find in the pinned comment below and also in the description of this video. Adam Gurry, thank you so much for your expertise and your fight for the country.
Thank you so much.